If I look at how many organizations are knowingly working on AI adoption, then we have gone from 2022, roughly more or less 70 use cases, today to 220 plus. Over 50% of public sector organizations use AI. So there has been an increase in terms of the adoption, and similarly the impact, close to 60 million euros last year.
Welcome to the Digital Government Podcast. Tune in to discover the future of governance and ways of getting there.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Digital Government Podcast with your usual host, Federico Plantera, sociologist, journalist, researcher. Today, basically checking in on what is Estonia's vision for AI-enabled government. And we are doing so with Ott Velsberg, who is the Chief Data Officer of the Government of Estonia and also responsible for the AI policy over there. Ott, welcome back to the podcast.
Nice to be here.
I'm saying welcome back and I'm saying checking in because we already had a chat together on this platform, on this channel, let's say. But that chat was 4 years ago. 4 years ago in AI are an era, basically. Just to put it into perspective, I think the time when we published that podcast was the beginning of 2022. And we were talking about how basically AI can empower data-driven decision-making. It was at that time in the public sector. In the meantime, just by the end of that same year, there was the public commercial release of ChatGPT. So a lot of things happened there, both in the ways that governments work with AI or have progressively embarked, let's say, on this journey of understanding how to adopt AI for better public service delivery. But at the same time, a lot has changed also on the citizen side and on the end users side, basically. A lot has changed in terms of expectations, in terms of awareness, in terms of just knowledge of how the tools function, and as a consequence, also concerns. So a lot has happened. I would start very lightly just asking you, because so many things have happened in the last 2-3 years in terms of AI in government in Estonia. Pick 3. Tell us 3 of your favorite things that have happened recently in Estonian digital government and AI, and things that have made you think, yes, this is going in the right direction. This is working.
So 2022, we started our reform on making open data available. And back then we had close to 700 data sets in the open data portal. Today we have launched our national data portal. And if you look at the current situation, then we have over 8,000 plus data sets, and hopefully very soon already plus 9,000. So during this more or less 3.5 years, this has been the increase. Now, to put that into perspective, between 2018 August when I joined up until 22, we went from less than 50 data sets to that 700. So this is kind of the most important. And it has not only been from the perspective of, yes, organizations more and more are aware that the data has public value and the reuse potential as well. It has been that various different registries that previously the public sector commercialized, for instance, business registry and other areas, we have actually made tremendous leaps, and they are widely utilized and free of charge and in a standardized format and so forth. So this is one side. And this, of course, links to our biggest work on ensuring that different LLMs are comprehensible. The quality of Estonian culture context is there. So last year, we finally got to 15 billion word corpora. So different Estonian language specific corporas, but altogether we have now amassed over 15 billion words. And this is something that we increasingly use and provide to various tech providers as well. Now, the second thing I would bring out is consent service. So consent service enables for citizens and companies to share their government health data via consent to other stakeholders. Why I bring this out? This is by far been the most time-consuming regulatory change. So I started working on this in the end of 2018, and finally, in March, we got this in our regulation. So it has been very time-consuming, but at the same time, we see that this service already has had huge impact. Millions of consents given, similarly utilized in financing, in healthcare, and different settings. So those who are listening in, not from Estonia, you can basically give a consent, and you can get a kind of decision on your bank loan in few minutes. You don't need to fill in all the different forms. In healthcare, you can share your health-related data to doctors that otherwise would not be able to see that, and so forth. And finally, what is kind of just as a general trend, if I look at how many organizations are knowingly working on AI adoption, then this has kind of, we have gone from 2020 to roughly more or less 70 use cases, if I recall, today to 220 plus. Over 50% of public sector organizations use AI. If we look at last year's statistics on the use of AI within workforce, then we look at roughly 37 to 50%, depending on the sector in the public sector. Executives 45%. So there has been an increase in terms of the adoption, and similarly the impact, close to 60 million euros last year annual impact. That's kind of it's a fact in itself. So these are one area. And just to finally, this fourth one, but data management has really taken off. Back then, most organizations still didn't have any data governance officer leads. Most didn't have data stewards in place. Today, most organizations have those people in place, and the quality of metadata and data quality itself is the best we have ever had.
I will pick up exactly this last point, because I think something that has been quite striking for me, I have to say, as in this strange role sometimes that I have of like insider, outsider, observer, is that it seems to me that the path that AI development, deployment, and implementation, in the sense of understanding where it fits and for what, and also what needs to be in place before we can go down that road, in Estonia has very much been connected exactly to an understanding of data and what data is, what data means, what it can do, which I think it's also exactly no coincidence that we're talking about this with you here today. And in terms, for example, of one of the developments that you have singled out, you said that Estonia now has over 220 public sector AI deployments. I remember that in something that you wrote in the past weeks, you said that the challenge basically is not anymore to think of pilots or like to envision pilots, but it is to see adoption happen in a repeatable and coherent way, basically. So what has changed in how you think about this kind of transition? Because the transition from pilots to scaled deployments is one of the things that I would say, at least from this point of view of being based in Brussels and so very close to the EU institutions, is one of the points that are highlighted the most about how Europe overall can advance in terms of AI adoption and implementation. So in terms instead of how you think about that transition, what has changed? And also, I have seen another one of the many developments that we have left, out of the picture, but that we could be mentioning here right now, that there is also an AI toolbox, like a trustworthy AI toolbox that you've put available to everyone. And that indeed, I went there to check a couple of times when I needed. So is that AI toolbox also trying to do something, let's say, past the stage of pilots that pilots themselves could not? Is it helping people understand where, how, and to what extent to use AI in public service?
Mm-hmm. So some of the things are still the same. So there is a lot of hands-on support that we provide. What has perhaps changed the most is the number of kind of demo pilot projects, POCs we are able to deliver to our end clients. So if we have a meeting with the client on Friday, then in best cases, we are able to deliver a working solution by Tuesday morning. So that's the speed of current innovation cycle. So I think what we're able to do is much sped up. What from a reuse perspective, of course, it's no longer only kind of open source, which I've been propagating since 2018 when we came out with the concept of AI commons, so reusable tool services. Now it's very much in terms of also providing the different UI components, but together with prompts and everything else. So that's the reusable aspect. So one thing that we are right now working on is a prompt library within the government. So it's kind of the reuse itself has a bit adjusted. The strong focus is also on on SaaS. So instead of just simply utilizing different services, that's the endpoint. You pay for the resources. That's it. What has also changed is there is a even more stronger reliance on cloud services. What we have done in terms of kind of allow quicker adoption is centrally doing trustworthiness assessments. Currently, we have roughly 10 available. So, you have the kind of a typical ones, ChatGPT, Gemini, and so forth, but we are extending in May with over 20 additional trustworthiness assessments on different tools and services. And the idea, it's really simple. So if someone wants to adopt something that already exists, then we have pre-assessed what are the risks, what are the mitigations you have to take. We are also doing data privacy impact assessments on particular use cases. We try to be as general as possible without the TPIA losing its focus value, but kind of from a scale perspective, it's been rather in terms of very concretely what you can use, different contexts, and similarly that if there are risks that you need to understand, mitigate, you are able to do it really quickly. And now finally, what we started with UK last year is algorithmic transparency standard. So we are currently working in midst of making algorithmic transparency mandatory for the whole of government. So last year we piloted, and there is the kind of a usability aspect there as well. So everything that has been done within the government, citizens should have an overview, other public sector organizations should have an overview, and also how they can reuse what has been made. So that's the premise. So extended view on this one.
3 words that I am hearing through your questions, but also thinking about the themes that we're touching upon are transparency, reuse, and consent-based, I would say. These are like 3 interesting words that I think we could picture together, not because they are necessarily belonging to the very same tool or like a only one tool, but if we talk about algorithmic decision making, then I hear exactly transparency and an approach that is based on that. Mm-hmm. If we talk, as you have mentioned before, the legal basis, the case for consent-based data sharing, is Estonia actually the first country basically to establish this legal basis for the consent-based data sharing?
Yes. So from data sharing, not document sharing and so forth, Estonia is the first one to have this type of a my data movement integrated into the government on that centralized level as we have.
And in that sense, so what you have already said that a high number of of consents have been granted, have been given by
Mhm.
users, meaning citizens so far. What does that basically unlock in practice? You made an example of the bank loan. I think that is a very fitting example. You
Mhm.
also mentioned healthcare. If we were to like go a little deeper in the healthcare use case, let's say, how does then this like consent based system work from really in the very first place the point of view of the user? So basically,
Mhm.
I'm a user, I agree, I give this consent. What basically now do I not need to do next?
So, for instance, let's imagine there's a company that provides kind of 360 health analytics. They would require your health information, your kind of gene data, and so forth. Then, if you want that service, if they want to utilize the government health data, then you can give via consent, and you can get everything from, I don't know, automated prescriptions. You can get health recommendations and so forth. So this is just from a healthcare perspective, but it's what it actually opens up is the idea that the government is the trustworthy kind of a manager, holder of data, and we can actually delegate much of the service development to private sector. Similarly, via consent. Imagine that today, um, there is a lot of citizen level kind of a vibe coded applications and everything else taking place. So again, if we have export data services, you give a consent, you can basically start to really simply integrate that data in your new agents or services as well. So you can start to delegate. I don't know, based on my attributes and everything else that are within the government registry. Find me different funding opportunities relevant for my company. Random example, but
Done that. Yep.
done exactly. So um, there is a lot of potential. Just take from like financing is really simple because oftentimes we want to understand who are our end clients, so people that want to take out loans. But imagine a more proactive approach. You have investors. You want to invest in low carbon dioxide vehicles to rebalance your portfolio. So you start reaching out to I don't know, the big companies in Estonia. So those who have 100 plus vehicles, you to provide finance offer, they would need to provide information on all vehicles via consent. The government can share all of this information on all the vehicles that the company has. No need to go and provide information one by one. So this is just one perspective. Just imagine you as a human in control over the information that the government has, you having a control over of how the government, how the private sector is processing your personal data. You're in command and control over how the government actually interacts with you. So it's a more kind of a citizen in its heart. You can compare how you are doing compared to others. It's up to you to decide the level of personalization that the government from service provision is actually providing. So I think data itself is the basis for doing all of that. And we need to give this additional layer how people actually manage their controls. So I think we haven't started to talk about data management from a citizen perspective. But we're trying to do that through the nationwide data and AI literacy campaign that we are working on. So objective 100,000 Estonians within a year. But hopefully more and more people understand their role in their own personal data management as well, because I see this is kind of growing in importance.
I totally agree. Totally agree. I actually found myself touching lightly this topic, like not going that deep, let's say, as we just did here, but just in terms of like how people can be put in the position, let's say, to pay attention themselves and also have some agency themselves into what data and what information about them is being shared or being put available, let's say, even to private companies, for example. Correct me if I'm wrong, but is this something that, for example, started already a little bit with GDPR and with cookies? I don't know, because, for example, sometimes I find myself talking to people and I don't know, when people are maybe showing me something on their phone. We have touched upon this with the Estonian data protection inspectorate, actually, in the beginning of the year. Where people usually go there and mindlessly just say accept all cookies, whatever. But then if you go there and check, wait, let me see, like, for example, you're on a website that you would not really expect, let's say, to ask you this question, because they're like, why would you need my data? And then you actually go and check what are the cookies permission to how many vendors, for example, you are allowing to use cookies on your navigation. Then you would see that basically by, I don't know, just going and checking a recipe of how to bake a carrot cake, then 697 third-party vendors are interested in attaching something to you, but you just wanted to check a cake. You just wanted to cook the recipe.
Yeah, I think like from like many of the things that we are working on, they are there in principle level on the EU regulation, or has existed previously in Estonian regulation as well. But the question that I oftentimes see that governments are failing is how to put those principles in place, in action. So if we talk about the aspect that we have the right, as per GDPR, to request data that is related to us, then how can you actually make it seamless? How can you actually help organizations build services on top? So getting, I don't know, CSVs and PDFs of the data that is related to your I don't know, home address or your employment history, no one can build a meaningful service on top of that. So taking the same principle, from AI, I oftentimes see human control. We talk about transparency, quality, and so forth. Okay, very great. But how can we actually give more control over to people? How can we actually, if we talk about, you need to ensure transparency over data processing, then the answer is data tracker. You actually see. And now, again, you asked in the beginning some quick, biggest wins. I think the change when it comes to data tracker, because it has been so difficult, has been a major one. So this year, over 60 information systems are planning to implement data tracker, something that most were against when I started. So I think this practical approach is what in the end counts. Go past beyond the principles.
Yeah, definitely. Also because it puts government organizations, agencies, or users exactly in front of the issue, literally, and also with the possibility to do something about it. Since you mentioned the European perspective and you mentioned things that are happening at the European level, there is the Data Governance Act, actually, at the moment in the European Union, that is designed to make sensitive public sector data reusable across sectors, as we spoke, but at the same time as well across borders. And this is something that eGovernance Academy is committed to at the moment and involved in, working with national statistical institutes across Europe to basically turn what in the Data Governance Act are legal requirements into something that instead works at the operational level. when before I was mentioning those three words that we have touched upon, we talked about the transparency, we talked about consent-based, we have talked also about the reuse, but you also have said, okay, when it comes to a solution, for example, like the data tracker, no, when it comes to consent-based system of citizen data management, let's say, some organizations were not in favor of that in the first place. So when it comes instead to data reuse, what are some of the biggest misconceptions in that domain about data reuse in government? And how can then we move from data that exists in information systems to data that exactly is safely and routinely used?
So there are a couple of things. So the first misunderstood conception is that there are only a couple of ways how one can process and utilize data. So if you think in terms of data processing, yes, in Estonia we have the X-Road data services, we have open data, but similarly you have consent-based data sharing, you have data scientist environment, you have synthetic data, you have multi-party computation, homomorphic encryption, and so forth. So depending on the kind of the objective itself, you need to find the relevant and most suitable solution. So it's not one way of how we have actually kind of known to utilize data. This is the right way. So it's a more broader picture. Then in terms of making data available and making investments, I think it's understanding that there is a feasibility point. If we talk that everything needs to be available, everything needs to be findable, then it actually is not the best use of government resources. So it's rather about where do we actually expect some impact, what are the things that we can easily publish, and how to make this as automated as possible. Up until 2022, I think one of the kind of shortcomings was that much of the work internally from different organizations was fully manual. And we started to work on Harvester. So instead of you manually publishing, we started to help you automate this publishing. And this is actually the kind of integral part. And in order to get there, and we love to talk about the AI, but in 2018 when I started, I early on already saw that data management or data governance as a whole wasn't a topic that executives were too keen on, but everyone wanted those shiny applications. And as a result, showcasing and linking the kind of the narrower data management to the outputs, the impact that will actually kind of your organization reap. So if you want to predict where car traffic accidents will happen, then you need to ensure that actually the GPS coordinates are correct, because otherwise they will point you in the middle of Africa and so forth. And this is the real kind of impact on service provision. And oftentimes finding the link to the KPIs that an organization has. So for instance, if our transportation authority has the objective of reducing traffic accidents and showcasing that traffic accident data is incorrect, then unfortunately you are in no way able to reduce the number of traffic accidents that will happen. So linking strategic objectives with data, it's difficult and oftentimes overlooked. We love to put like a data-specific objectives, but then the kind of a business side value doesn't come out.
Speaking of objectives and speaking of goals, thanks for this picture that we have painted so far, because this leads basically almost naturally to what I think can be derived as well from what, for example, the Digital Agenda 2030 in Estonia says, but also in connection to the more long-term Estonia 2035 development strategy. Because in this sense, it seems to me that there is this view of a free person's free choice, let's say, so that humans are in control. Humans need to be in control. The three principles, the three terms that we have talked about so far: transparency, reuse, consent-based, like definitely frame it in the sense, and frame a long-term view where basically people can see when AI is used. They can understand how an outcome was reached, also through the development and the developed literacy that we mentioned before. And they can ultimately also perhaps control, let's say, the use of their data, as we said. So in this sense, I think that there is, however, an interesting tension there, like to unpack, that is connected to how does that match with the fact that basically the vision, let's say, describes also a state that is proactive and that acts, that anticipates perhaps as well, and also a state that basically, in the end of the day, explains itself if it needs to be so transparent. So how do you hold both things in place, let's say?
Mm-hmm. So it's understanding that people are different. So if we take, for instance, unemployment, then in the unemployment case, we might have 40% of people that don't require any support of finding a job. So they are highly sought professionals. If they lose a job, it will likely take less than 30, 60 days to find a new job. Then we might have 30% of people that require maybe some assistance, but it doesn't need to be a human kind of a consultant. We are relying on the same expert systems that we have today, kind of expert systems 2.0 or 3.0. So even more additional support, what are the different trainings, what are the skills you could develop, and as a result, you might get a more fancier, higher paying job. So again, it's a proactive approach. And then we are getting into the last two groups, whereby either people don't have the necessary skills, they will likely be long-term unemployed, so they get this kind of a more personalized human touch and support. Now, how come the proactiveness come? If you think in terms of unemployment agency, then even the name itself implies we are focusing on unemployment. Instead, we should start focusing on employment. So employment agency. So how do we proactively improve people's skills? How do we proactively help them to find the next job to work on, instead of allowing people to become unemployed in the first place, because this is the most expensive for the government. Similarly, if you think in terms of our health board, its focus is on health. Hopefully all the activities come aligned on the same principle, but I think this proactiveness in the end depends on the person. Some prefer a more proactive, assisted. So for instance, we have the genome portal. So those who log in have donated their genome data, they can see health-related information. I don't know, how well your body tolerates caffeine, risk of breast cancer, and so forth. But still, in the very first time, you have to give a consent. Yes, I understand these are kind of predictions. It's not the 100% likelihood that I will have a breast cancer and so forth. So now in terms of, and I'm not wearing my Apple Watch right now, but like health information, sharing this information with the government or private sector vendor as well, getting proactive notifications. Hey, your blood pressure is too high, your pulse. And considering your chronic diseases, you are right now increasing your likelihood. We recommend you to stop drinking coffee. Just a random example.
Random example, but very, very clear also. Yeah, very obviously, drinking coffee is a very good example to say to an Italian. But getting past that, I would just say, we're getting actually to the end of this episode. So I would pair a few things, for example, that I think perhaps can tell us something about other domains and other areas of how governments can work and operate better and more efficiently by using artificial intelligence. Because, for example, some of the other developments that have taken place in Estonia recently are where legislative drafting has become, one of the test cases. Legislative work is one of the most consequential things that governments do, no? But also one of the most manual, I would say. So AI is utilized also for legislative drafting, but at the same time, you also have put quite a lot of focus on procurement as another function, let's say another action of government that can be improved by utilizing artificial intelligence. So why, for example, legislative drafting and procurement were two of the early or like test cases, let's say, to go into for seeing how AI can genuinely change the quality of government procedures and also how fast it acts?
So maybe I'll start from how did we narrow down to procurement legislation, and it was also briefing notes. So it was through the government satisfaction survey that we carried out. So what are the things that the public officials find most time consuming? What are the activities daily and weekly that bring the most dissatisfaction with their job? And based on this, we kind of narrowed down on how big the problem really is. So the first use case that we started to work on was briefing notes. So briefing notes are things written for ministers, to members in the embassies, politicians, executives. And it was staggering that just within 2 ministries, we took into focus for understanding the impact. We saw that we are spending over 33,000 hours a year writing briefing notes. So if you put that into money, it's like 700,000+ euros a year just writing briefing notes on topics. And the same thing was procurement. It was one of the most sought after aspects. No one likes to do that. It's highly technical. Legislation, oftentimes it was cited as taking too much time. We don't have enough specialists and so forth. And as a result, we started to work on the procurement, briefing notes. After that, the legislation. So already today, I'm drafting different acts without having any legal background. Procurement, you fill in what you want to procure. So this is not something that we fully automate. You can still describe, and it can be done to some extent. But the time savings are huge. And the most important thing is it's the kind of satisfaction with the work that you do. You're an expert. You don't want to spend time on drafting the right procurement document. Oftentimes they are very much already standardized how things need to be done. But also there are other aspects. So for instance, when it comes to procurement, we actually created a model that assessed different procurements, if they are what is called innovation procurements, how to make procurements more innovative. So this is something that oftentimes private sector says to the government, that you are not innovative enough. And if you know how to procure well, we could deliver you better. So widely used assessment, assurance and quality control and so forth. So there are so many areas whereby we can just help to make our life a bit more efficient, and as a result make our day-to-day work more enjoyable. So this is a short story, but I think legislation, huge, tremendous potential. And overall, we plan to save roughly 97 million euros worth of work in the next 2 years, so annual. So that's the overall objective.
Yeah, crazy numbers. And also in relation to the fact that the two things that we mentioned are both perhaps some of the most widely regarded as like the most bureaucratic, let's say, processes or like things that you could be possibly be happening to do in government.
And they are easy to automate as well to some extent. Yes, there are unique cases always, edge cases.
Yes.
In the procurement as well. Like if you go to the, I don't know, dynamic procurement frameworks, it's freaking difficult, even for specialists working in procurement. But still, like 90% of the use cases you can automate. And human control is kind of important. Always validate what you're actually sending out.
From always validate what you're actually sending out, something that I would actually suggest and recommend everyone to do when you're using AI tools to get an output. We are at the end of this conversation. Thank you very much. And I would close with, very, 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 very brief question on what has already happened in the past, when it came to Estonia developing and implementing ways, let's say, for a government to work more efficiently, to work better, to deliver services better to citizens in ways that fit to them. So governments elsewhere, in this case as well, are trying to learn from Estonia. The question here is, in this case, now talking about data and AI policy, basically, and what has happened. Let's not say in the last 4 years. 4 years was a long time frame, but at least in the last year and a half, two, let's say, what basically are the real determinants of what Estonia has been able to build? And which of these do you see from your privileged point of view, let's say, as actually transferable? And instead, what are those that are specific to Estonia and very contingent on conditions that are harder to replicate?
So, hands-on support. Currently, we are kind of making this as a kind of a scalable solution through the AI accelerator. So you come in with a problem, and within a short time frame, 3-4 months, you have a solution that you can start to use. There's also the integration part kind of planned beforehand, and then scaling out. So oftentimes the model is find one client that is interested, test, develop, and then scale out. The second replicable aspect has been definitely knowledge and training and wider community building. So I still remember my very first working group meeting where we had roughly 15 people. There were a couple of external stakeholders. Today, this year in our AI trip, altogether we had close to 4,000 participants online plus physical. So build a community, and it's kind of use this platform more also to request others to share their kind of input. What has worked well for us, to be honest, from one end you need to have the stick, the other end the carrot. So for centralized funding, we have different requirements, expectations, but at the same time, we are providing opportunities as well. So I'm taking this mindset that if you are working with an organization, you go all in. You are as part of their team, and get technical expertise within your team as well. I think this is something that has paid off from my own perspective. So I didn't have any government experience. I came from a tech background to the government, and actually supporting the business side that are oftentimes the key people. So they don't have technical skills. They don't know what is possible to do. So help them design what is possible and find new ways.
Ott Velsberg, thanks a lot for joining us today in this conversation.
Thank you.
And thanks a lot also to all the listeners who tuned in for this episode of the Digital Government Podcast. That's it also for today from your usual host. And I'll see you all in the next one.
This podcast is brought to you by the eGovernance Academy. Tune in next time.